Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on whoever is watching this video from whichever part of the world and whatever the time of day it may be at that particular geographical location at the time of watching this video. I am Chaudhry Abdullah Qaseed, and I'm a concerned citizen of Bangladesh. And by profession, I'm an organizational development and organizational performance management consultant. And I've got about 26 years of work experience, mostly in the field of HR and in organizational development. And thankfully, I have worked for about 17, 18 years in senior management positions and director level positions for many very large companies. And now I am working as a consultant for several organizations at the same time. So that's me, myself, in a nutshell. And the reason that I am here recording this video is because of the fact that I enjoy recording videos on various subjects and topics, and I've been doing that for quite some time. And I am sometimes doing it individually in my own capacity. Sometimes I'm doing it from another page that I have on social media called Chaudhry Qaseed by my own name. And I'm a consultant for life, business, and career. I call it LBC consultant. And at the same time, sometimes I also record videos on behalf of a platform that has been recently created. It is called QRCode, which is produced by a friend of mine called Rana Islam, and the R stands for his name, and Q is my name. So that's me and all the introductions out of the way. And the purpose of today's video, and the topic of today's video, the subject on which I would like to talk to everyone about today, is the need for maintaining peace and harmony in the subcontinent, especially in between countries, India and Bangladesh. And why it is necessary to maintain peace and harmony in this region and for both of our countries, and how it's beneficial for both countries and how to achieve that. So would like to talk about all of these points. And the reason that I'm also recording this, especially using the language medium English exclusively and not making it bilingual as most of my videos are, is because I've recently recorded a video on this subject, and thankfully it did receive quite a lot of views in my own Facebook, and the few thousand impressions I see on LinkedIn. But I have actually received a lot of feedback that we do need to have some of these programs done only in English for international audiences. And in this particular subject, in case we could have more videos like this circulated among international audiences in India who are not familiar with the Bangla language, because it is true that more than 80 to 90% of people in India don't understand Bengali. It's only people in West Bengal and a few people in other parts of India who do understand Bengali. And unfortunately, a lot of videos with a lot of sensible thoughts being shared are either bilingual or only in Bangla, and that doesn't really get much circulation among audiences across India. So, not that I'm expecting that my little video is going to get circulated all over India, but at least some non-Bangla speaking Indian friends would be watching it, and then hopefully they could share it at least among their own personal and individual networks. And at least I hope that more and more people will start making attempts like this, and then gradually that will start having a bit of a ripple effect and a bit of a snowballing effect, as it is called. And gradually more and more people will get to know and understand about what is exactly happening here in Bangladesh, and not be relying and collecting all their information and their impressions from the media, the mainstream media, the television channels, and many of the YouTubers who are making videos about the situation in Bangladesh, who are based in India, because a lot of the information being given over there is inaccurate, and that is actually contributing to creating a lot of tension and stress in between the two countries. So, so I think I've kind of established why we should be talking about this subject, but I think I can talk a little bit more about what will happen if we don't start talking about the subject more and more before we get into other aspects of the subject. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what will happen if we don't arrest the situation where it is now, and what will happen unless we de-escalate from where we are. See, the thing is, right now, gradually, there is still some people who are sensible on both sides and who are trying to discuss the matter in a sensible way and trying to de-escalate the situation, trying to explain how the situation is not the way that it seems. But unfortunately, gradually, more and more people from both sides, from both India and Bangladesh, are starting to do some reckless activities, and either side is reacting in a very negative way to those reckless activities. And then a lot of people who were sensible up to that point in time sees that reckless activity, and a significant number of the people who were sensible also start becoming impetuous and impulsive, and they lose that calmness of mind that they were having up to that point in time. So in that way, gradually, the number of people who are sensible on both sides is declining. And I'm also feeling that when I'm talking to my friends as well, because even a couple of weeks back, their attitude was a little bit more, I would say, calmer and reconciliatory. But now I can start sensing that aggression is beginning to climb in their sentiments as well. And some of them are beginning to get very much influenced by what they're seeing in the media over there, and of course very legitimately also reacting negatively to some reckless activities and incidents which are actually taking place over here. And they are beginning to say that this kind of activities, if it continues, it requires a bit more of a hardline response. And in the same way, there are a lot of people in Bangladesh who do want a peaceful relations to exist with India. They want peace all over the country. But gradually, some of the things are happening in India, and that is beginning to make a lot of people who want peace and harmony also to start thinking a little bit more belligerently. So we need to step down from that situation. We need to pull back from that kind of a situation where both sides are gradually starting to become a little bit more aggressive. Because if we do not hold the aggression in check, and if things really go out of hand, then of course it will be terrible, not only for Bangladesh, but also it will not be a very good thing for India also. Undoubtedly, India is an enormous power, and we as a country, a neighboring country, we should not want to incur the wrath of an enormous, gigantic neighbor like India, because definitely there would be economic repercussions, there would be military repercussions, and there would be loss of lives, loss of property, loss of infrastructure. And if something like that happens, it would be devastating for a country like Bangladesh, and it would push us behind by many years. And that's not something that we should want, or anybody should aspire to, or anybody should be instigating the nation towards. On the same, like when we're talking about aggression, on the other side of the coin, of course, I mean, Bangladesh is a lot smaller than India, but some people say, I've actually heard in some Indian media, they were saying that if India wants, it can swallow Bangladesh. Very bad thing to say. It's a terrible thing to say. Because, see, the thing is that, and there are people in Bangladesh who are responding to comments like that by saying that, yes, if India wants to swallow us, then we will actually be like a bag of fish bones, macher kata. And we're not going to really go down very easily. And undoubtedly, we may cause a little bit of a choking problem. And that's also, I mean, that sort of a response also should not be coming from people of Bangladesh. And definitely that kind of initial attitude should also not be expressed by any irresponsible media person in any Indian TV channel or YouTube channel. So we need to tone down on these kinds of comments, these kinds of loose remarks, these kind of irresponsible information that's going around. Now, because the thing is very true that, I mean, if there is a problem in between countries like Bangladesh and India, then it's not just going to remain a subject of just a geographical tension or a tension in between two countries. Invariably, religion will become a very big factor over here as well. And when religion becomes a factor, then gradually it would be seen that this is more of a religious war than a geographical war. And then a lot of people who do want peace in this country, I mean, tens of millions of people, crores of people, would start perceiving this as a religious war, and they would start becoming aggressive. And there could be millions and millions of Muslims who are living in India who may start negatively reacting about whatever is happening over here as well. So there will be very bad, disastrous side effects happening in India as well. And definitely there will be a lot of disasters happening within this country. So we don't need to go into that sort of a situation. And India also cannot afford to destabilize itself in a situation like this, in a time like this. And it really cannot afford to get into a very aggressive confrontation with Bangladesh because there are a lot of other neighbors who India also needs to think about, worry about, and maintain their balance of relations with. So we should definitely not be getting towards a state where both countries are beginning to threaten one another or beginning to flex muscles or trying to assess each other's strengths or trying to show off to one another. So we need to get back from a situation like that. And I think it's very, very important that we emphasize upon a very strategic subject. And the fact is that there are millions and millions of Bangladeshis, as well as Indians, as well as other people from the subcontinent who are also living all over the world. And undoubtedly, if there is a problem and tension that starts in the home ground, then it will also start having side effects and ripple effects among the communities in those other countries as well. So, the spillover effects are really very, very bad, and we should not be wanting to go in that direction. And we need to control our media. We need to control people making irresponsible remarks and comments. We need to tone things down. And one of the main ways that we can do that is by not propagating and circulating uncorroborated information and news which is unnecessarily inflammatory. Like, I don't know where these kinds of news are being collected from, that country like Bangladesh, now we are starting to make nuclear weapons and we are focusing on enhancing our armaments. A new regime has just stepped in, and it's just been a few months, and even within this time we've had to face terrible floods, and there are so many economic problems that we're having to face. There's like close to $200 billion has been siphoned out of the banks. The banks are in trouble. So we as a country need to face all of these things, and that's what we're all focusing on. And there is absolutely no time for or room for or scope for, militarization and all of those things. So I have no idea from where this kind of information is being collected by some YouTubers and some Indian channels, and they are the way that they are presenting it, the way that they are communicating it to the people, it's just causing unnecessary tension and unnecessary stress, and it's causing anxiety and panic among the Indian people, and there's no need for that. And at the same time, I want to make it very clear that one of the major things that the Indian TV channels are trying to highlight is that people who follow the Hindu religion over here in this country are in trouble. And I want to emphasize repeatedly that is not the case. Only very recently, today, this is the 7th of December, it's just been about a month and a half that we've had the Durga Puja celebrations over here. Diwali was also celebrated over here, and there was no untoward incident. And I think there are almost 100,000 mondops all over the country, and there's about I think we have about 25 million followers of the Hindu religion over here, and there were no untoward incidents. Everyone celebrated, everyone had a great time. A lot of, Muslims also went and attended these events and became a part of the celebration. There's no problem over here. I mean, we need to understand that all the information that is going over there is actually just propaganda. Now, let's say that if there are about 100,000 spots, locations where the puja celebration is taking place, and if there is a stray incident in only 2 or 3 centers, that actually statistically does not amount to anything at all. And a lot of investigation has gone into a few such stray incidents, and it has been found that in many of the cases, it's actually some nefarious people belonging to certain political parties. In fact, I hate to say it like that, but there are some people belonging to the former political regime who thought that it would be a good idea to go and create some kind of a bit of chaos in some of the centers, and then they would actually use that information to try and create a negative impression about what is happening in Bangladesh. But they did not succeed, and very few of them were actually able to go and create any kind of a ruckus or any sort of a negative incident in the centers. Probably there were only 3 or 4 incidents in the entire country where there were more than 1 lakh centers all over the country. There are 64,000 villages, and definitely in each village there is definitely at least one center or the other. And in some villages there are multiple places where the puja has taken place. So this is complete, I would not even hesitate to use the word bullshit. And honestly speaking, if you look at it, the level of harmony that exists in between people of the Hindu religion and the Muslims, historically, there is no problem over here in between religions. The problem that did happen a little bit in August and September was the fact that there was a regime change, as we all know. And a lot of people, that regime, of course, there were, 10, at least, 1 to 2 crore supporters were definitely there. Out of that, a few 100,000 people were holders of office and active party members, and they held party positions. Now, if you do a statistical analysis, then you will find that, of course, in the same proportion, if there is about approximately 8 to 10% of the population is Hindu, then 8 to 10% of the party was also comprised of Hindu members and Hindu office bearers. Now, if, let's say, from the entire party, there were 10 to 20,000 people who were identified as people who misused their power while they were in power, then of course 7-8% of that number would also happen to be followers of the Hindu religion. So when there is a backlash going on against people who use that party's position and power to flex muscles and extortion and carry out other kinds of criminal activities in various areas, and if people are reacting negatively against people who did that, then statistically it is only very inevitable that a few, like let's say if action is being taken against 10,000 people who misused power during the Awami League regime, then automatically 1,000 to 1,500 of those people, of those people that people are reacting against, would be Hindus, but people are not going against them because they are Hindus, but because of the fact that they were members of the previous regime, and not just members, I mean, but people who misused that position or the power. So we need to be very clear and careful about that. The general people are also not going after everyone who was an Awami League supporter. I have a lot of friends who were in Awami League. I am a member of Rotary and a lot of other social organizations where there used to be a lot of people who were part of Awami League and who were holding offices as well. And nothing has happened to them. They're fine. They are, in fact, carrying out their regular business activities, their social activities, attending meetings. Nothing has happened to them because many of these people were good people and they did not misuse their power. So the general people actually just, overlooked them completely. Nothing happened to them. And in the same way, one needs to understand that if there is one party that has been controlling the country for almost nearly 2 decades, and of course also a certain portion of that party has been, creating a lot of oppression in the country, then naturally when there will be a regime change, there will be a little bit of a backlash. If you think about it, I think the present government has done a pretty good job in containing it. I mean, the present government actually took control of the country. It's been 4 months, August, September, October, November. Yeah, it's just been 4 months. And I think there is no incident of chaos or instability or any kind of attacks on minority that is taking place right now. There were a few incidents, like I said, that was only in the month of August and the first half of September. After that, things have pretty much stabilized. And we need to give the new government a certain bit of time because they are comprised of people who were not in power, who were not in control, who are coming and sitting in these positions of authority for the first time in their lives. So you do need to give them a little bit of time to stabilize, to get hold of everything and to understand what's going on. So they need some time to get the reins into their hands. And I think they have enough on their plate, and I think they're not doing a bad job. If you think about it, and it's not been a smooth sailing in these 4 months. Like I said, there were the terrible floods. There's an enormous economic crisis going on. So in spite of all of these things, there was the law and order situation. Police were not in duty for some time. But I think if you compare all of those adversities, I think the nation is pretty much on track, and we are definitely not in that bad a situation as many people would think or would like others to think. And in terms of diplomatic relations in between India and Bangladesh, I think you've also got to give it a little bit of time. We need to stabilize a lot of things internally, and then of course the present government, which is more like an interim government, they will take necessary steps in order to create a more balanced situation with all the countries in the neighborhood. So you've got to give it a little bit of time. Maybe they haven't been able to focus that much of attention in the diplomatic relations aspect as yet, because there are a lot of things to take care of on the local front. So we need to give them time. We need to be a little bit considerate, and it doesn't help if neighboring countries are constantly showering us with unnecessary negative propaganda. And this entire narrative that is being put forward by many of the journalists in India and many of the, unfortunately, some reckless politicians of India as well, that the entire stability of Bangladesh depended on the previous regime. And the fact that the previous regime is no longer there means that Bangladesh is going to collapse is not actually a valid statement, because you need to, if you consider the situation like, let's say, riding a bus, or going from one place to another, it's like 100-kilometer journey, and you need to change, let's say, the transport a number of times in that journey. There are a number of stops. Now, I understand that, let's say, 40 of that 100 kilometers has been I mean, let's say you've been riding in a certain kind of bus, which for you, let's say, is more comfortable, and you like the seats, you like the driver, you like everything. But you do need to understand that in this last 100 kilometers, 60 kilometers you also did ride in other forms of transport, which may not have been as comfortable, but you did you did get across, and without too much of hassle or any negative incident. Maybe the seats were not as comfortable as you wanted. Maybe the food being served in the bus is not as great, the snacks or the refreshment. Maybe it's a little bit bumpier, but you still did cross 60 kilometers in those other modes of transport as well, didn't you? So, I mean, you may have a certain preference that I would prefer to ride in this Scania or Volvo or Mercedes bus or whatever. But let's say for whatever reason that bus is not available after a certain point in time. It's okay to get into another bus and continue the journey for the next 15, 20 kilometers or for however long it may be. I mean, there is no reason to gripe and complain and raise a hue and cry. You may have a little bit of feeling that, yeah, that bus was better, that bus would have been better, but what makes you think that the bus that you will now get in for the next leg of the journey isn't going to be nice? What makes you think that it will not be even better, even nicer? You don't know. So why don't you just allow things to settle down? Why don't you not create that much of a fuss and a ruckus? And why don't you just get up on that other bus and see how things are? Now, another thing that I would like to talk about, and that's very important, is the fact that, I mean, the reason that I made this comparison about comfort is, let's say from your side, by you, I'm talking to people of India, or let's say journalists of India, or even the government of India. Let's say the government of India may feel more comfortable with a government in Bangladesh who is, let's say, who harbors a little bit more of a negative sentiment or animosity towards a country that India has some level of discomfort with. Now, that the regime has changed, they could be apprehensive that the new government that is coming in may not be having that same level of animosity with a country that you may be having a certain degree of animosity with. But why do we need all this animosity? Like, without being vague, let me just be very blunt and mention the name of the country that we are kind of talking about in a roundabout way, Pakistan. Undoubtedly, Pakistan is a country that Bangladesh has a lot of issues with, a lot of tension with, and we cannot forget and overlook and excuse the negative history that we have with Pakistan. We cannot entirely wipe out the slate and forget the lives that were lost during the war, or the negative attitude that the Pakistani government had towards people of what was at that time East Pakistan. So we're not forgetting any of that. But at the same time, we do need to understand that while we still need to resolve those issues, we cannot be holding on to that and magnifying it beyond proportion either. If that is what needs to happen in between two countries who were at war, or if one country's come out of another country and that tension has got to, if we expect that tension has got to remain and prolong, then by that theory, no one should be having any interactions with Britain, because, almost half the planet Earth used to be under the British Empire. And I think most of the countries that came out of the British rule didn't really come out in a very peaceful way. There was always a little bit of tension. There was always quite a lot of tension in many of the cases. There were wars, battles, skirmishes. A lot of unpleasantries have happened. If you consider America, the War of Independence, America had a very, very bloody war of independence that they needed to fight in order to come out of British dominion. However, as you can see, and it's not something recent, for more than 100 years, Americans and the British have actually had one of the strongest alliances in the world. And in more recent times, if we think about it, like Germany was actually the country that caused the First World War and the Second World War, and yet everyone in Europe and most of the European countries actually received the brunt of German wrath in these two world wars. But then most of these countries now work so closely with Germany, and they've formed the EU, and they're moving forward in a very harmonious way. So there is no reason to think that just because there has been problems and animosities in the past doesn't mean that maybe we can, go forward and have a productive relationship. And I'm not just talking about between Bangladesh and Pakistan. I think there should be a peaceful and harmonious relationship in between all the countries in the subcontinent. And I think Bangladesh should and can play a very important role in trying to foster that harmony. And I think Bangladesh already did start doing that by its contribution in creation of SARC. Bangladesh took the major step forward in the establishment of SARC. And I mean, if everyone would have been a little bit more cooperative, then maybe we could have created a unity very much like the ASEAN, or maybe it could have even become something like the EU, in which case I think it would have been beneficial for everybody. So I think that we all need to understand that there is a lot more to gain from working harmoniously with one another than creating conflict in between one another. So I think that it's very important that it's not just between India and Bangladesh, but as a subcontinent, we all need to start to work together and look forward towards much more peaceful times. And one of the things that we need to understand that whenever we sit for any sort of a negotiation, I mean, being someone who is a consultant for the organizations and as a person who also does a lot of training, conducts a lot of training for leadership and negotiation and conflict resolution, one thing that we all need to understand is when people sit for any kind of a conflict resolution, whether that be between friends, between family, between neighbors, and on a macro scale in between companies, and then even more macro scale between countries, we need to remember that we have to overlook a lot of negative things that could be said. We need to overlook a lot of negative sentiments that is being expressed. And we need to understand that when we are here sitting at a negotiation table, there will be a lot of things said which will be insulting, which will not be nice, which will be degrading. But the success of a negotiation and a success of a long-term peaceful solution lies in one's ability to be able to digest that sort of negative feedback, some insults, some derogatory remarks, some disparaging comments. And those who are able to do that, keeping the priority and the focus on the peace that can come at the end of the talks and the benefits that can come from those peaceful solutions, those are the people who will succeed. Those are the negotiations which will yield successful results. So I think that definitely, I mean, people who are in the diplomatic positions are far more intelligent than all of us and far more experienced. But sometimes maybe it's helpful to hear some suggestions and some thoughts and ideas of the common people, because there was, in fact, an Indian movie that says that don't underestimate the power of the common man. So it's like that. I mean, we, the common people, also sometimes have some good ideas to share, and that's basically what trying to do over here. So I don't want to extend this video any further. I think we've talked about a lot of things, but the point that I basically want to make is that we need to think sensibly. We need to think about peace. We need to think about the benefits and the prosperity that will come for all the countries in this region if we learn to coexist peacefully, if we learn to work peacefully. And definitely right now, the major focus is in between India and Bangladesh, where the tensions are rising, and we need to try and de-escalate that as much as possible and as soon as possible. And I definitely, that would be good for both countries, more so maybe for a smaller country like Bangladesh, but undoubtedly it also has a lot of benefits for India also. So let's just try and go towards more of a peaceful solution and de-escalation of this unnecessary negativity that is getting created in this entire region, something that nobody's going to benefit from. So let's now focus on peace. And there's also another thing to remember, that the general people are the people who get worst affected whenever there is any kind of a confrontational situation that arises in between two countries. I mean, if it goes up to a military point, then, some mid-level military officers are at risk, but it's thousands and thousands of the general soldiers whose lives are at risk. And then, of course, the same goes for general people as well. So we need to care about people, their lives, their future, their economy, their jobs, their businesses, lots of things to think about. So let's not be so quick to get into an aggressive mode. Let's not be so quick to flex muscles. Let's not be so quick to try and show off to one another. And let us try and put peace first. I think that is the message that I want to emphasize most upon. And of course, once again, would just like to say that let's all be responsible in what we say, especially in media, and let's not over sensationalize. Let's all remain sensible. Thank you for listening to me. I hope I made sense this entire time that I've been talking. And I thank you for all of those who've taken time to listen to what I've been saying here. And I will try and share more videos on this subject and various other subjects. And I hope you'll also listen in on those as well. Thank you.